For many decades, the rivalry between Israel and Iran was a conflict fought in the shadows, a dangerous but predictable game of indirect attacks and deniable operations. This long-standing hostility unfolded across the Middle East, with each nation using other groups and countries as pawns in their strategic chess match. Iran built a network of allies and proxies, often called the Axis of Resistance, which included Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and various militias in Syria and Iraq. These groups allowed Tehran to project its power and threaten Israel without risking a direct war. Israel, in turn, conducted a relentless campaign of airstrikes, cyber attacks, and targeted assassinations, primarily aimed at containing Iran's influence and disrupting its nuclear ambitions. But these actions were largely confined to territories outside Iran itself, such as Syria. This established pattern of proxy warfare created a fragile yet enduring status quo. It was a state of contained conflict where both sides understood the unwritten rules of engagement. Israel would strike Iranian assets in Syria, and Iran would retaliate through its proxies. But a direct, state-on-state confrontation was carefully avoided. This shadow war allowed both leaderships to manage the conflict without escalating it into a full-scale regional catastrophe that neither side truly wanted. The battlegrounds were places like Damascus, Beirut, and Gaza, while the home fronts in Tel Aviv and Tehran remained relatively untouched. This long period of indirect fighting defined the security landscape of the Middle East, creating a tense but somewhat stable balance of power built on mutual deterrence and strategic ambiguity. However, recent events have shattered this long-held understanding, marking a profound and perilous shift in the region's dynamics. The old rules no longer apply. The conflict has moved from the periphery to the center, from the shadows into the harsh light of direct military exchange. This transition was not sudden, but the culmination of years of escalating tensions, particularly since the Hamas attack on Israel in October 2023 and the subsequent war in Gaza. The gradual erosion of the old boundaries of conflict has now given way to a new and far more dangerous reality. The once unthinkable has happened. Israel and Iran are now directly targeting one another's sovereign territory, fundamentally altering the nature of their decades-long struggle. This move from proxy war to direct confrontation represents the most significant change in Middle Eastern geopolitics in a generation. It has forced every nation in the region, as well as global powers, to reassess their alliances, strategies, and expectations. The delicate balance that once existed has been upended, creating a vacuum filled with uncertainty and the potential for wider conflict. The implications of this shift are enormous, affecting everything from regional security and diplomatic alignments to global energy markets and the international fight against extremism. The old Middle East, defined by its shadow wars, is gone, replaced by a new, more volatile landscape where the primary antagonists now face each other directly. This new chapter is still being written, and its outcome remains dangerously uncertain. Israel has made a deliberate and audacious strategic pivot, moving away from its long-standing policy of simply containing Iran through proxy battles. This new approach, reportedly codenamed Operation Rising Lion, involves direct military strikes inside Iran itself, a significant escalation designed to change the fundamental dynamics. Instead of limiting its actions to hitting Iranian-backed militias, Israel is now using its advanced military capabilities, including F-35 fighter jets, sophisticated drones, and potent cyber attacks, to target the heart of the Iranian state. The targets have included sensitive nuclear facilities, missile production sites, and even symbols of the regime's power, such as state media headquarters and police stations in Tehran. This is a clear signal that Israel no longer sees the proxy battlefield as sufficient. The rationale behind this bold new strategy is multifaceted and reflects a major shift in Israeli thinking. For years, Israeli leaders believed containment was enough. Now, the calculation has changed. The new doctrine aims to cripple Iran's ability to project power and to undermine the authority of its leadership, particularly that of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. By striking directly at the regime's core assets, Israel intends to impose a much higher cost. The goal is no longer just containment but deterrence through direct punishment. Israel is attempting to prove it can penetrate Iranian defenses at will, thereby eroding Tehran's confidence and forcing it onto the defensive. This shift matters immensely because it fundamentally alters the risks for both nations. By taking the fight directly to Iranian soil, Israel has crossed a red line respected for decades. This action raises the stakes enormously, creating a direct line of fire between the two regional superpowers. It is a high-risk, high-reward strategy. If successful, Israel could significantly degrade Iran's military capabilities. However, if it fails or provokes an overwhelming response, it could drag the entire Middle East into devastating conflict. The impact of these direct strikes is not just military but psychological. For the Iranian regime, the attacks represent a profound violation. The ability of Israeli forces to strike targets deep within Iran is a source of immense embarrassment for Tehran's leaders. It demonstrates a vulnerability the regime has tried to conceal. This new Israeli doctrine has effectively called Iran's bluff, forcing it to choose between massive retaliation or a more restrained response that might appear weak. Either way, the old equilibrium has been destroyed, and a new, more confrontational era has begun. Faced with Israel's unprecedented direct attacks, Iran was compelled to respond in a manner that demonstrated strength without provoking an all-out war it could ill afford. Tehran retaliated by launching a large-scale barrage of over 100 drones and ballistic missiles towards Israeli cities. This was a significant act of military defiance, the first time Iran had ever launched a direct state-to-state attack on Israel from its own territory. While Israel's formidable air defense systems, supported by its allies, managed to intercept the vast majority of these projectiles, some did get through and strike civilian areas. The response was carefully calibrated to send a message that Iran would not tolerate attacks on its sovereignty. Yet it also exposed the limitations of its offensive capabilities against Israel's advanced defensive shield. Internally, the conflict has placed immense strain on an Iranian society already grappling with severe economic and political challenges. The regime is facing soaring inflation, which hovers around 50%, making everyday life increasingly difficult for ordinary citizens. Sanctions have crippled the economy for years, and the added costs of a direct military confrontation are exacerbating these problems. Despite these pressures, the population has, for the most part, rallied behind the leadership in the face of an external threat. There have been no mass uprisings or widespread public dissent against the conflict. However, this national unity is fragile. Beneath the surface, there are growing cracks in support for the regime, particularly as people question the wisdom of a confrontation that brings further hardship without clear strategic gains. The Iranian leadership finds itself in a precarious position. It must project an image of strength and resolve to its people and its regional allies, while simultaneously managing a collapsing economy and deep-seated internal discontent. The uncertainty surrounding the succession of the aging supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, adds another layer of instability to the political landscape. The direct conflict with Israel has intensified the power struggles within the ruling elite as different factions debate the best course of action. Some hardliners may push for a more aggressive stance, while others may recognize the urgent need to de-escalate and focus on domestic problems before they spiral out of control and threaten the regime's survival. Ultimately, Iran remains a formidable regional power, but it is now visibly weakened and more isolated. The conflict has exposed its vulnerabilities, both militarily and economically. While the regime has not collapsed, it is operating under a level of pressure it has not experienced in decades. The direct strikes have forced Tehran into a defensive posture, reacting to Israeli actions rather than dictating the terms of engagement. This shift has damaged its credibility and weakened its standing among its proxies and allies. Iran is still standing, but the foundations of its power have been shaken, making it more susceptible to internal unrest and external diplomatic pressure as it navigates this dangerous new era of direct confrontation with its oldest adversary. One of the most significant consequences of the escalating conflict has been the systematic dismantling of Iran's network of regional proxies, the so-called axis of resistance. For years, this alliance of state and non-state actors was Tehran's primary tool for projecting power across the Middle East and challenging Israel and its allies. However, since the events of late 2023, this network has suffered a series of devastating blows that have severely weakened its operational capacity and strategic coherence. Israel, in particular, has pursued a relentless campaign to degrade these groups, seeing them as extensions of the Iranian threat. This has resulted in a marked decline in the Axis's ability to coordinate actions and pose a unified threat to regional stability. Hezbollah in Lebanon, long considered the crown jewel of Iran's proxy network, has been significantly degraded. The group has lost several key commanders in precise Israeli strikes and has seen much of its formidable missile arsenal destroyed or depleted. While it retains the ability to harm Israel, its capacity for a sustained, large-scale conflict has been diminished. In Gaza, Hamas, another key Iranian ally, has been decimated following the Israeli military campaign. Its leadership has been scattered, its military infrastructure largely destroyed, and its control over the territory shattered. This has removed a critical front from which Iran could pressure Israel, leaving Tehran with fewer options for retaliation and leverage in the southern theater. Elsewhere, other members of the Axis have also been weakened. In Yemen, the Houthis, who had been disrupting global shipping in the Red Sea in a show of solidarity, have been forced to scale back their operations following sustained airstrikes by the United States and the United Kingdom. Their ability to act as a significant regional spoiler has been curtailed, limiting their effectiveness as an Iranian proxy. Perhaps the most dramatic blow to Iran's regional ambitions came with the collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria. For years, Assad's government was a crucial geographical and logistical linchpin for Iran, providing a land bridge to Lebanon and a forward base for operations against Israel. Its fall has deprived Iran of a vital state ally, disrupting its supply lines and strategic depth. The cumulative effect of these losses is a profound shift in the regional balance of power, moving decisively away from Iran and its Shia-led axis. The weakening of these proxy forces has left Tehran more isolated and exposed, reducing its ability to threaten its adversaries indirectly. The axis of resistance now appears less like a cohesive and powerful alliance, and more like a collection of weakened, embattled groups struggling for their own survival. This decline has created a power vacuum that other regional actors, particularly the Sunni-led Gulf states, are eager to fill. The erosion of Iran's proxy network is not just a tactical setback. It represents a strategic failure that will reshape the political landscape of the Middle East for years to come. The direct conflict between Israel and Iran has accelerated a historic realignment that was already underway in the Middle East, pushing many Arab nations closer to Israel. The shared threat of an aggressive and potentially nuclear-armed Iran has superseded historical animosities, creating a powerful incentive for cooperation. Gulf countries, most notably Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, now view Iran as the primary source of instability in the region. This perception has led them to quietly but decisively pivot towards Israel, seeing it as a powerful and necessary partner in a new regional security architecture designed to contain Tehran's ambitions. This strategic convergence is reshaping alliances that have defined the region for over 70 years. The Abraham Accords, which normalized relations between Israel and several Arab states, including the UAE and Bahrain, laid the groundwork for this new era of cooperation. These agreements were not just about economic and diplomatic ties. They were underpinned by a shared security calculus focused on countering Iran. The recent escalation has only reinforced the logic of this alignment. While Saudi Arabia has officially frozen public normalization talks in response to the conflict in Gaza, behind the scenes, security and intelligence cooperation with Israel continues and may even be deepening. For these Gulf states, the pragmatic need for stability, security, and economic prosperity now outweighs their traditional ideological commitment to the Palestinian cause, marking a significant departure from past Arab solidarity. This emerging bloc of nations is bound together by a common interest in regional stability. Countries like the UAE, Egypt, and Qatar prioritize economic development and trade, and they see Iran's disruptive behavior as a direct threat to their long-term vision for a modernized and interconnected Middle East. They increasingly see Israel as a vital technology and security partner that can help them achieve these goals. This pragmatic approach has created a de facto alliance of status quo powers, united in their opposition to Iran's revolutionary agenda. The result is a clear division in the region, with a pro-stability, pro-Western bloc coalescing around Israel and the Gulf states, standing in opposition to a weakened but still dangerous Iran and its remaining proxies. This new alignment has profound implications for the future of the Middle East. It sidelines the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as the central organizing principle of regional politics, replacing it with the rivalry between the Iran-led Axis and the new Israeli-Arab coalition. This shift creates new opportunities for diplomatic breakthroughs and economic integration, but also carries the risk of entrenching a new, more dangerous Cold War in the region. The days when Israel was uniformly isolated in a hostile Arab world are over. Instead, a new, more complex map of power is emerging, one in which former adversaries are finding common ground against a common enemy, fundamentally altering the strategic landscape for all involved. The escalating conflict between Israel and Iran is not unfolding in a vacuum. It is being closely watched and influenced by global powers, each with its own interests and strategies. The United States, Russia, and China are all playing significant roles navigating the complex web of relationships in the region. The United States, as Israel's most important ally, has provided crucial diplomatic support and military backing. However, the administration in Washington has also been careful to advocate for restraint, seeking to prevent the conflict from spiraling into a wider regional war that could threaten global energy supplies and draw American forces deeper into another Middle Eastern entanglement. The U.S. role is one of cautious containment, providing Israel with the means to defend itself while simultaneously working to de-escalate tensions. Russia, meanwhile, finds itself in a complex and delicate position. As an ally to both Iran and Syria, and with surprisingly good working relations with Israel, Moscow has tried to play the role of a mediator. It has condemned Israel's direct strikes, but has stopped short of any concrete action that would alienate Tel Aviv. Russia sees the conflict as an opportunity to enhance its own stature as a regional power broker, positioning itself as a stabilizing force that can talk to all sides. Furthermore, the turmoil in the Middle East serves as a useful distraction from its ongoing war in Ukraine, diverting international attention and resources away from that conflict. Russia's approach is opportunistic, aimed at maximizing its influence while minimizing its risks in a volatile environment. China's involvement is driven primarily by its economic interests. As a major importer of Middle Eastern oil and a significant investor in the region through its Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing's primary goal is stability. China has expanded its economic footprint in both the Gulf states and Iran, focusing on building infrastructure and fostering trade connectivity rather than forging military alliances. It maintains a policy of non-interference in the political disputes of the region, preferring to act as a neutral economic partner to all. While it benefits from a secure flow of energy, it is reluctant to become entangled in the region's intractable security problems, leaving the heavy lifting of crisis management to other powers, while it reaps the economic benefits of peace. The involvement of these great powers adds another layer of complexity to the Israel-Iran conflict. The future of the Middle East will be shaped not only by the actions of regional players, but also by the competing interests of Washington, Moscow, and Beijing. The current power shift is creating a new regional hierarchy where Israel's military initiative is reshaping alliances and Iran stands weakened but not defeated. The Gulf states are aligning more firmly with Israel, while Russia and China act as opportunistic brokers. Whether this new, volatile order leads to a fragile stability managed by diplomacy or descends into a wider war will depend on the careful calculations of leaders in Tel Aviv, Tehran, and capitals around the world. The stakes could not be higher.